Hello nerds, before we get on to today's show, I just want to give a bit of a shout out to everyone and anyone that came to Global Bird Fair 2024 and that came to watch Into the Wild's live recorded shows, including Nature Room 101, Wildlife Tourism in Sri Lanka, and Drunk Natural History. All the shows that we recorded at Global Bird Fair this year will be available for your ears, so watch out for that wherever you get your podcasts and watch us on social media because we'll be shouting about them. Well, maybe not Drunk Natural History. I need to listen to that one first. Anyway, on to today's show. Welcome to Into the Wild, the podcast that's the nectar of knowledge in wildlife and conservation chat to the bee of enthusiasm about nature. Does that make any sense?
Congratulations for that introduction, Ryan. Have you been eating nectar?
I didn't prepare that. Can you believe that?
All right, poet. That was so bad. I was so confused where you were going with that.
You were confused. I had no idea what was coming out of my mouth.
It was like, I felt like I was swimming in nectar.
Shall I try it again?
No, I think our listeners deserve that gold, if I'm honest.
Just keep that nugget. It's a very warm day in
It's
London.
very hot.
I don't think it's very
Just
hot.
for listeners, Ryan came onto the Zoom with his shirt open, like Enrique Iglesias.
I mean, I'll take that. I'll take that any day of the week. It was just so hot, but I'm just paranoid about COVID at the moment because it's just everywhere.
Oh my God, I have had it so much.
Every time I'm warm, I'm like, well, that's it. I'm on borrowed time.
Oh, really?
But then forgetting it's 26 degrees outside and I'm
so
in a
your
nylon
only
shirt.
symptom is warm before you think you're ill?
Well, you get fevers.
No, I know. Anyway, tell me about, let's talk about what wildlife we've seen.
What wildlife have I seen this week?
Tell me about nature this week.
I haven't identified them yet. That's my little naturey task this evening with my British insect identification book. But I saw on one bit of, I think it was hogweed. It was quite small actually. It might have been cowpies. No, I think it was a type, right? It was
an umbellifer.
It was yeah. There we go. But I saw 4 different species of hoverfly across 2 bits of the flower, which I thought was lovely. To have 4 different species, just like blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. It's just an all-you-can-eat buffet.
It is.
And so you're going to get different people turning up.
Exactly. And I just like watching hoverfly quite close because you see their little like little straw come out like
Their little straw. Technical name.
That's actually the scientific. Yeah.
Don't write into the show.
If we're partnered with the RES and I'm saying hoverflies have little straws.
Do you know what they do?
They do.
And your enjoyment of it wasn't ruined by not knowing the actual name.
It wasn't.
Is it still a proboscis for a hoverfly, or is that just butterflies?
All right. Off.
I don't know. I genuinely don't know.
Is it still a proboscis, right?
Birds.
That word that everyone knows.
Well, I spent the day working I've got a little hut in the garden, which I work from sometimes. And it must just be like today or yesterday, a nest of blackbirds have fledged. And they're really, really ungainly on the wing and just generally walking. And they look like fresh blackbirds, look like teddy bears because they're like brown and fluffy. And just in front of where I can sit I've got a kayak hanging on the wall. And it's quite a slippery surface. So they were like slipping all over it. It's just so beautiful. And then all day they were like menaces in the garden, just like this little squad, just kicking up a stink everywhere they went. It was really nice.
I love that. I love that so much. Love that for you.
Love that for you.
Love that for you. Look at us enjoying blackbirds and hoverfly.
So that was nice. So nature's arrived. Why are we here? What are we doing this month?
Well, this month we've got quite a meaty topic, but before we better go into our first segment of the show. So do you want to put your seatbelt on?
Hang on. It's on.
It's on. Cool. There was no mime to that. Click. Nerds, it's time for our first segment of the show, which is Nature News. More and more intense every time. Nature News, here we go. So, my first one, do you mind if I go first?
Oh, that would be my honour.
So the first one I'm going to talk to you about comes from the Wildlife Society, which is a large-scale camera trap survey in Senegal has revealed that the first confirmed sighting of a giant pangolin since 1999, which is 20 years ago.
Shut up! I'm Googling that right now.
I know. To Google them, they're absolutely stunning. Researchers in the Neokolo Koba National Park found camera trap images of the giant pangolin in 2023 during a larger study in the area. The giant pangolin is one of the species in this area believed to have disappeared from parts of their former range. One researcher told New Scientist that finding the species in the park was a surprise. The giant pangolin is considered endangered by the IUCN due to factors like habitat loss and over-harvesting for their parts on the illegal wildlife trade. But exciting that they are coming back to the national park.
So nice. And they're so cute. Although
They're
I did just go on Wikipedia. The animal has strong sense of smell and large anal glands. Its secretions may be significant to animal communication. This is the weird bit, not the anal glands. Well, so many things have got anal glands, come on.
Yeah.
We are adults. The species walks with most of its weight on its columnar rear legs and curls its front paws, walking on the outsides of the wrists rather than the palms to protect the claws. What's the point in claws if you ain't going to use them?
Yeah.
Or it's to protect them for claw-related activities.
I thought that the tunnel I thought you were going down there was they've got an incredible sense of smell and massive anal glands, and I thought that was going to be like a problem for the pangolin.
Yeah, I think
just constant bad stench for the pangolin.
That's why they run so fast because they're
There's a bit of me that's almost confused why you brought up the sense of smell and the anal glands.
Oh, because
and then told me about the front.
Do you know what? Because I couldn't not say anal glands.
You just have to take it to the gutter, don't you? What's yours?
Do you know what? It's not like the biggest nature news in the world. I just read this the other day and I thought...
You're going to tell us about the blackbirds again?
I have blackbirds in my garden. I actually also, another bit of nature news, which I don't have the full details on, but apparently there is a disease that is affecting blackbirds somewhere down south and the population has plummeted.
That's scary.
Absolutely scary and terrifying. And I don't want it to come to Scotland. I mean, I don't want it anywhere, obviously. I'm not an
NIMBY. Of course. But you're now emotionally attached to them.
But that's something maybe I'll have a look and research for next time just to give you an update. Otherwise, Google it yourself. But no, this is because I think sometimes it's nice to be aware of things to allow us to go, oh, another way is possible.
Okay.
And this is the news that in... it's a long time ago, but the Greenpeace Instagram account shared it. So I was like, whoa, that in Luxembourg, public transport is free. So in 2020, Luxembourg became the first country in the world to make all public transportation free of charge. And this was to reduce traffic congestion and promote public transport. Of course, that's what's going to happen.
That's an idea that is so desired by me. I can't fathom it exists somewhere.
Well, it does. So it's a bit like the NHS, right? It should just be free at point.
It should just be a thing. People need to get around.
Like, people have to get around to work.
Yeah.
We didn't all decide to live in urban spaces where you have to get from the place to work.
All right, let me just write down Luxembourg as the list of places that I want to get to out of England.
What else is in Luxembourg, Ryan, that you'd want to go for out of interest?
I have no idea.
Absolutely no idea. But
I've just put them on the list. It's only the free transport.
The buses.
The buses. Although then we find out there's nothing really exciting in Luxembourg, so there's nowhere to go.
Just travelling from unexciting place to unexciting place. But for free.
But for free, yeah?
But if you go in the winter, you can have a warm.
A what, sorry?
For free, to travel around.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, free heating.
Go on.
Well, the only other thing I was going to say, actually, I forgot I was going to say about this. This isn't a particularly good bit of news, and I'm sure many people have heard about it in the news on social media. And I'm taking this from the Dazed Instagram account, which I do recommend you guys all follow. But in one of the UK's most disturbing crackdowns on civil liberties yet, 5 Just Stop Oil members have been sentenced to years in prison for conspiracy to cause public nuisance.
Bullshit.
One of them being Cressy Grethin, a 22-year-old Cambridge student, received a 4-year prison sentence, the longest UK history for peaceful protest. And I spoke about this on my Instagram a little bit today, and I just gave some thoughts. And I just said, I kind of feel, and I want to say it on here as well, I think it's, if we live in a nation, in a country where we are imprisoning and sentencing people that plan to or do conduct peaceful protests against an industry that is causing the collapse of our natural systems and therefore the collapse of our survival and the survival of our other inhabitants on this country, but we are not sentencing or looking to imprison the people that are profiting off that industry, that are causing the collapse of all these things. I think as a country, we need to turn around and go, what the fuck is going on? We've got something wrong. And I think I got very upset about it today because I feel for these 5 people. I also feel for the right to kind of say, I'm not happy with this. It just really bothers me. It irks me. If you haven't read about it, I do recommend Googling it. It will be in the news. Clue yourself up. Get reading about it. I know Tori Choi has been talking about it a lot on her Instagram, so go check her out as well and read about that. But yeah, bit of a shit one, but I thought it was important to talk about.
Oh my God, it's such a shit one. Please just, I don't know. It's just so worrying. Just generally the trend towards clamping down on protests in this country. And yeah. It's why it's important to exercise those rights and fight for your rights. Protest.
Okay, so that's the end of Nature News. It's time for our next segment. Are you ready for this, Nadia? You're going to put your seatbelt back on?
I've never took it off, just to be safe.
Never took it off. Yeah, never take it off.
It is a choice. You can do that.
Okay, so it's now time for the segment from our partners from 2024. It is, of course, the
Royal Entomological Society segment of the month.
A few points from the RES this month, nerds. So, Ento 24, the flagship annual conference of the Royal Entomological Society, is on the 10th to the 12th of September in Liverpool and online. And you can register, or the registration is open now into the 16th of August, and that can be found on the RES's website, which is if you're into your entomology, into your insects, you're going to want to attend that. You're going to learn a lot and it's going to be a great event. The Royal Entomological Society Southwest online meetup is on Friday, the 6th of September in the evening with a regional representative, Liv Isham, where you can meet fellow entomologists and naturalists in the region and consider possible activities for the rest of the year. And finally, the winning images in the annual insect photography competition run by the RES have been released. Again, if you want to see them, you can go to insectweek.org, which is in the write-up of the show, to see the galleries. And that is it from the Royal Entomological Society segment of the week month. We're a monthly show now. Okay, so Nadia, we just now need to go on to our topic. This is
the filling.
I'm
we
going
go
to learn
the
a
filling
lot.
Of the show.
The filling, yeah. We've done the first slice of bread. Let's get on to this. So Nadia, are you ready? Should we jump in?
I think let's just jump in.
Let's jump in. Here we go.
Do we have a jingle for that?
Yeah, Oscar usually puts a bit of a jingle to it. Do you not listen to our show?
Sometimes. I'm part of it. I'm in it.
But
there are actors and actresses who don't watch their own films. I'm one of them.
Cool. You've just created a community of people to go like, yeah, I just don't watch my own art. And yes, nerds, I'm calling this art.
Well, what else is it if
Exactly,
it's not art?
thank
I
you.
tell you what, it's not journalism.
It's not science.
It's not journalism. It's not science. It must be art.
It must be art.
So we're going to go to the main bit of the show, which today we're talking about national parks.
Woo!
I know, right? And actually, we've been talking quite a lot about this, and actually, we think it's one of those things that actually quite a lot of people know about, but don't know about.
They're like the crumpets of the nature world, right?
I don't agree with. Go on.
Why? They're like crumpets. Everyone knows in England what they are. If you're listening internationally, I'm sorry, you will not know what a crumpet is. But if you're from the UK, you will know what a crumpet is. But you don't know what it is.
Well, it's a bread stuff, is it?
So that's very vague.
Yeah.
Like I could say before this episode, a national park is a green space.
Yeah, and then so is everything else, right?
Yeah. So it doesn't. Yeah, the national parks are the crumpets of the nature world, and I will not have.
I would say they're the
try and
crumpets of
call them out.
land.
The crumpets of land. There you go. So anyway, sorry to interject.
That's fine. I think it's useful for us to know, and I think after you listen to our interview with Rose today, you'll know. I'm hoping you will feel kind of a lot more informed, but also a little bit like, okay, that's why it's important for us to be aware of what these things are and their potential, and what they can be. But Ryan, let's just double check what your knowledge on national parks is. Can you tell me how many national parks there are in England?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
How many would you say?
Oh, sorry.
then?
Do you want the actual number?
Yeah. Why don't you tell our listeners just as part of their
I can tell the
information?
number. There are, I believe, and this fluctuates daily, so I could have yesterday's figures.
It is the stock exchange.
Yeah, it does go up and down. I don't know. I'm going to say 13?
Wow, you're actually not that far off. There are 10.
Am I not?
No, there are 10 national parks in England.
Okay.
Okay. Do you have
I was
a
either going
favourite?
to say that or 708. So,
Similar.
do I have a favourite?
What's your favourite?
No, because I'm going to be dead honest. Being a city lad, I haven't actually visited that many national parks.
Okay, should I give a quick roll call and you tell me if you've been to it?
Okay,
It's
go.
10. We can do this quickly.
Yeah.
Okay, so in England, I'm talking England here. Sorry, Scotland and Wales and Northern Ireland do not have any. The Broads. Been to the Broads?
No.
You'd like them.
Where
I
is
think.
it? Where is it?
Norfolk and Suffolk and maybe
No.
somewhere else. Dartmoor.
No, but I'm going.
Okay, great. Exmoor.
No.
To be honest, I thought those two were the same thing for a long time.
Brilliant.
Lake District.
I have been to the Lake District.
New Forest.
I have been to New Forest.
North York Moors.
Don't know. I don't think so.
Northumberland.
No.
Peak District.
I feel like I have, but I can't remember it. And I
Can't put
don't
your
want
finger
that
on
to
it.
be a judgment on the Peak District.
No. South Downs
No.
and Yorkshire Dales.
No.
Wow, you've not been to many places.
No.
And given that this is a podcast about nature and you love nature, that's interesting as a point, right?
I'm working class. I can't really afford to travel a lot of the time.
Yeah, fair enough. We did
Unlike
used to have,
Luxembourg.
I mean, if we renationalised the rail system, we could probably get a lot of trains
Yeah.
back into some of these places which are hard to reach, but obviously they've been cut.
Yeah, I bet it is. Okay, so those are our national parks, 10 of them.
Yeah, we've got 10
that
national
Ryan's
parks. I
barely
mean,
seen.
there's also another 3 in Wales, another 2 in Scotland. Can you name the 2 in Scotland?
The Cairngorms
Yes, correct.
and the rest of Scotland.
No, I'm sure Scotland would appreciate it. The other national park in Scotland is Loch Lomond and the Trossachs, which I can kind of see on my way over here when I get the ferry over to the Isle of Bute.
Nice.
So what are these national parks? So unlike national parks in lots of other countries where you think about these big wildernesses, national parks in the UK are like mainly owned by private landowners, right?
Well,
And they include towns and villages and all kinds of stuff. So like you could drive through a national park and not realizing you're driving through a national park. Like it's not, you would just naturally, I drove through the North York Moors National Park the other day and then Northumberland National Park. I wasn't like stopped. It wasn't like going into a thing, like a nature reserve. Right?
You weren't like, oh, there's rainbows with beavers jumping over them. 1 minute, I'm in a national park.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. Rainbows with beavers. And that is the aspiration that we've got. But essentially, back in the 1940s, from a whole load of outpouring of a movement from working class people, really, to be like, actually, we deserve to be outdoors and we deserve to have fresh air. There's a whole history of people, ramblers, fighting to be able to access green spaces and have that kind of place where all people also belong in the countryside. Still a fight that we're having today in so many different ways.
That's mad that's still a fight.
But prior to that, we didn't have that, right? So we're looking at like a good 100 years worth of like protesting and trying to bring things to Parliament, trying to make change, which culminated into this act, which was brought in 1949, was the landmark year, where the government passes an act of Parliament to establish national parks, specifically to conserve and enhance their natural beauty, because we were kind of scared at the time that this kind of the big black smoke and industrialization was going to chomp its way into the countryside, but also responding to the protesters, such as the Kinder Scout protesters and the mass trespass, to say we want places to have recreational opportunities for the public. And so 1949 was that landmark year of that act to say, okay, we are going to establish these national parks. So all of the 10 that we've got in England, the 3 in Wales, 2 in Scotland, didn't just happen then. That just as an act to allow the creation of them over time, which is why we've got what we've got today. And so just a few more little kind of like tidbits on them, because obviously we're a nature podcast. We care about nature. So there are varying amounts of land set aside in national parks for nature. So the most heavily regulated, the bit of legal designation that we've got to protect nature is our SSSI, Sites of Special Scientific Interest. But they vary from park to park. And Rose is going to talk a little bit more about the state of nature in our national parks. But just to give you an idea of the makeup of them. So the South Downs National Park, only 6% is a SSSI. Whereas the New Forest, 56% of the New Forest is a SSSI, which is an area protected to nature.
Wow.
And it varies. So Dartmoor is 27%, Exmoor is 28%, and the Yorkshire Dales is 26%. And that's just to kind of demonstrate a little bit that like they're not just these wildernesses for nature. Like
Yeah,
there's a whole
absolutely.
load of makeup. There are
Mixed
villages,
use.
towns, people live in them. They are farmed. There is agriculture. So there's a real mosaic of habitats within, of land use within parks. But I don't want to take away Rose's thunder and talk a little bit more about that. But essentially, that's what we've got in England. And I always talk about England so much more. I'm really Scotland. Sorry, Scotland. I'm really Scotland.
You're really Scotland.
I'm really sorry, Scotland and Wales. You also have national parks. And the picture is much the same of what Rose is about to talk about today.
Absolutely. Nadia, can you, before we go on to can you hear that noise? That chirping? Is that chirping?
Yeah. What is that?
That must mean we've hit insects.
Oh,
we got to talk about insects. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, nerds, listening to this beautiful episode about national parks. Before we go on to our chat with Rose from the Campaign for National Parks, I managed to talk to someone from Bug Life about a wonderful project that's happening in Dartmoor National Park. This is Laura Larkin from Bug Life, who is heading up a project for blue ground beetles. Now, these were once a species that we thought were like pretty much gone, not really around. And there's a few sites around England now on Dartmoor National Park, and there's a great citizen science program working away to help kind of like figure out where these beetles are, where the strongholds are, what the kind of situation is. So here is Laura to tell you more about this project.
I am Laura Larkin and I'm a Senior Conservation Officer with Bug Life in the southwest of England. So Bug Life are a wildlife charity and we work right across the UK conserving different species of invertebrates. So we work quite a lot on pollinators and restoring their habitat. We also do quite a lot of species conservation work. And we basically kind of try and get people involved in invertebrates, let them know how they can help them, and also work on improving their habitats as well. Dartmoor and Dartmoor National Park is a really important place for these beetles. The blue ground beetle was thought to be extinct in the UK until I think it was 1994 when a population was discovered in a site on Dartmoor. And since then, seven others have been discovered. They may well be lingering and hanging on in there in other woodlands around Dartmoor. There's obviously quite a lot of kind of small fragments of ancient woodlands that are still present, and we haven't necessarily been able to search through all of them. So that's kind of where the project comes in, where we're hoping to learn a bit more about where they might be. Through my role in Bug Life, I help to support our conservation officers working on some of our various projects through the south of England, and I also lead on our blue ground beetle work. Dartmoor basically provides excellent conditions for the beetles, the kind of the humidity and the wildness of the place. It's a very important location for them. Through my role in Bug Life, I help to support our conservation officers working on some of our various projects through the south of England, and I also lead on our blue ground beetle work. The blue ground beetle is the UK's largest ground beetle, and it's known from 15 UK sites. There's one site in South Wales, there are 8 sites on Dartmoor, and there are 6 sites in Cornwall. The project at the moment is funded by Natural England, and we've also historically had funding from Papillon Gin as well. The beetle itself is it's a fantastic beetle. They're really quite stunning creatures. They're most active each year in the spring, so we tend to survey for them between kind of late March and June, and we do this by going out at night in the dark with torches and shining them up and down the trees. So although it's a ground beetle, the beetles are predominantly found on trees because they tend to feed on tree slugs. So you find them clambering up and down the trees at night in search of prey. They tend to be found, the beetles, in kind of ancient woodland fragments. So tend to be woodlands, deciduous woodlands of oak or of beech. And they're found in places that are quite damp, quite humid, often very mossy. They don't seem to like places with an awful lot of ground cover. And they tend to quite often be found on south-facing slopes where there's quite a lot of dead wood. There's still obviously bits we need to learn about these beetles. They're only being known from 15 sites. There is still a lot to find out. And the project basically is looking to find the beetles in additional sites and also learn more about the places they're found in. So we were very excited a couple of years ago to discover them at 2 new sites. So we took the total up to 15. And hopefully we will continue to find out more about them and find more sites as the project continues. Anybody living in or visiting southwest England can very much get involved in our blue ground beetle project. And if you search the internet for blue ground beetle hunt, you will come across our webpage. We're basically looking for people to submit records of anything that they think might be a blue ground beetle that they have found whilst out walking or out wandering around woodlands in the southwest. We're hoping that this will potentially lead to some new sites being discovered, because obviously it's very difficult to get around every single woodland. I think since we've launched this, we've had over 90 submissions, and quite a reasonable number of them have actually been blue ground beetle. If you visit our webpage, we have actually got a kind of an ID guide on there, which has very kindly been produced for us by John Walters, who's a local naturalist. It gives a bit of information about what the blue ground beetles look like compared to other large kind of blue, kind of purpley beetles that they might potentially be confused with. It looks very, very similar to a few other species, and it is quite easy to confuse them. But yeah, any pictures people have ever taken of any beetles that they think might be a blue ground beetle, if you could compare them to the pictures on this ID guide and use our kind of online submission form to send them to us, we would love to see your pictures. And if it is a blue ground beetle, we will be in touch with you and let you know.
Big thank you from Laura there from Bug Life. It is wonderful to know. Now, I know we're going to learn a bit more about national parks, about kind of their situation, the state of nature, like you said, but it is motivating to know that there are organizations out here trying to figure stuff out and trying to kind of get people connected to
the
it.
fact that there is a whole member of staff dedicated to be like, I am here for these beetles.
I know, it warms your heart, and it just
and also the
warms your
fact
heart.
that there was an action in there encouraging people to go out and look for them and record sightings.
Exactly.
Which is something you can do, and I think we need to do it.
And it's that beautiful, like I think Laura said there, like, 90 submissions so far, and a good chunk of them are actually blue ground beetles. And I think
so they've got it correct.
Got it correct, but also it doesn't matter if you find a blue ground beetle or not. You're going out looking and you're doing that, and you might find something else, and it's lovely. So a big thank you to Laura there and her team that are working on that project.
And also it's worth reminding, this is one of, I'm really bad at it, but if you want to get into something, because insects are so under-recorded and underappreciated and under-observed so much of the time, if it was your kink and you wanted to do it, but if you wanted to be I'm sorry, but if you wanted to be the first person to find a record of something in a place, get into insects, because it's likely you are going to be the first
You're
person
gonna
to
see
ever
something
record
that someone,
a beetle in a place.
So true. It's so true. It's lovely. And I love citizen science programs like that. And I think it's lovely. So big thank you to Laura once again, and her team and everyone from Bug Life that are involved with that. So now, nerds, we have had a lovely chat with a lady called Rose O'Neill, who's the director of Campaign for National Parks. Now, I didn't know much about this organisation. I didn't know what they did. I didn't know about Rose's work. And I didn't really know, I'll be honest, nerds, much about national parks in the UK either. So this is a chat with Rose O'Neill from Campaign for National Parks to learn more about what they are, where they've come from, and the state of them in 2024. Rose, welcome to Into the Wild. It's lovely to have you here. First of all, most important question of this chat with you is, how's your day been?
It's been good. It's been we've been interviewing today for a new exciting project around marine national parks. So that's been very exciting. So good to join and tell you.
How do you just drop something in that without me wanting to ask a load of questions about it? But oh well. No, it's fine.
Right in there.
It's fine. Well, let's stay terrestrial
Nadia's
for this
face was
podcast.
Yeah. Although at the end, definitely tell us a bit about that, because that is exciting and interesting. But the second most important question for the nerds that are listening is, can you start by telling us who you are and what you do and who you're representing today?
So I'm Rose O'Neill. I'm Chief Executive of the Campaign for National Parks. We are the only independent charity that is dedicated to securing the future of national parks in England and Wales. And our mission is really to inspire action to make them wilder and more inclusive so everyone can enjoy them.
Nice. Important stuff.
Yeah, and we're completely independent from government, to receive no government funding. So a key part of our role is to sort of speak truth to power and be the sort of critical friend of the national parks in England and Wales.
I feel like they need a friend. We'll get into that.
So, Rose, can you just actually tell us, because I think I need this information as well. What is a national park? What makes a national park a national park?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll start off with the sort of legal answer.
Mm-hmm.
National parks have, and we're celebrating the 75th anniversary of national parks in the UK because 75 years ago, the government brought in a new piece of legislation that laid out the ability to protect landscapes and places around the country that were really important to the nation in perpetuity. So the idea is that these are places that are designated in law with the purpose of conserving and enhancing wildlife, natural beauty and cultural heritage, and also with the purpose of enabling the public to enjoy their special qualities. So that's sort of legally what they are. Thanks to some campaigning that we've been doing over the years, we now have national park authorities that have been set up, and it's their role to sort of deliver on those purposes. And they have particular powers, like they have planning powers, so they can control the built environment and urban development in national parks. So that's the sort of like technical answer. But actually, national parks in many ways are sort of like a vision or a dream. They're sort of places where they're for everyone, like for people, no matter their backgrounds, where they can immerse themselves in nature. So they're very much the idea behind national parks, certainly when they were first founded, is that they were sort of green lungs or places that everyone, if you lived in a town or a city, you get out with, and they get out to and immerse yourself in nature, and they would belong to you as citizens of the nation.
That's a beautiful vision. That is a beautiful vision, isn't it? To set aside all this place for those purposes. But the question is, Rose, and I guess this comes back to you saying that you're an independent body. Are they fulfilling that? And I guess, what is the purpose of Campaign for National Parks? Why did we need it? So what's going on in terms of the role that you're fulfilling?
So Campaign for National Parks is a sort of, I guess, a collective campaign of different organisations, NGOs that have an interest in national parks. So organisations like the National Trust, the RSPB, but also local organisations like the Friends of the Dales, the Friends of the Lake District, and the Ramblers, lots of different organisations with a collective interest. And actually, sort of almost 90 years ago, those organisations came together and just were like, right, we've got a common cause. We want to create and found national parks in the UK. So that was the sort of founding purpose of the body. And our first success was sort of the creation of the national parks.
So you've been around right since the beginning?
Yeah, right since the beginning.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And,
nice.
and since then we've had like different like phases of the work. But, back in the 1990s, we were campaigned for legislation to set up national park authorities as independent bodies with planning powers. We campaigned more recently for the New Forest in the South Downs. And right now we're campaigning for a new national park in North Wales, where the Welsh Government are keen to designate a new national park. But our mission has really changed, I think, over the years as the sort of pressures on national parks have changed. So now we're really focused on how to make the existing national parks we have wilder, and how we can make sure that they can, really play their full role in the climate emergency as landscapes that can soak up carbon. And also we're really about, I mentioned equity. That's really important in terms of the access that people have to national parks, but also equity in decision making. We're campaigning to make sure people from all backgrounds can have a say in the decision making and policy making process.
That's really interesting. Just on that last point, and I know, Ryan, your next question will be digging into that purpose around nature. But on that last point around equity, which is something that I've worked at in my career, I remember my last job was with the RSPB before I do what I do now. And I remember I used to do landscape policy and was looking into who sat on the boards of national parks. And it's fair to say that they do not represent the public at large. I think, is that a good kind of conclusion? Is that correct still? Has it changed vastly since I worked at the RSPB?
No, and the landscape review, which was this independent review that Julian Glover led 5 years or so, did quite a lot of data analysis around that. And they found that, men outnumber women 2-1. The average age is something like 60 or 70. There was less than 1% of people of colour on the boards. Very little expertise in areas related to their purposes. like nature, very, so that's sort of one of the things that we're campaigning for, is reform to that governance process and reform to decision making, so that the boards, one, can have the skills they need to deliver their purposes, but also are much more representative of the public that they serve, both the people that live locally, but also that they're national parks, so they need to be representative of the nation.
That's a really good point as well, is saying that they're national parks. Do you know what I mean? It's very important to include the surrounding community of it, but these are spaces, like you said, for everyone nationally within this nation to go and see, enjoy, and have a say in kind of what's happening in there. I think that's a really important thing that probably is forgotten a lot of the time when we're talking about these spaces as well, when we're talking about the decisions. So can you tell us a bit about, and I think I'm dreading the answer to this question.
And this is, I guess, our listeners are interested in this.
Yeah, this is an important question, but I'm on tender hooks right here. But can you tell us about the state of nature in national parks in the UK?
Yeah, it's good timing for us, because we've just completed a health check on the state of nature in national parks in England and Wales. And every measure we looked at, it's not great. I mean, basically, there are, as you know, national trends in terms of biodiversity decline, and certainly the national parks are not bucking those trends at all.
Right.
That said, there are some amazing sort of places and initiatives in national parks. At the weekend, I was down in New Forest, and you can hear the places that you can hear nightjar, and there are some amazing fragments of habitat and species left. But when we look systematically across the piece, pulling together the different data sets, no matter what we looked at, it didn't look good. So if you like, I can tell you a bit about the different.
Oh, please make us
areas.
Please do.
So overall, we found that just like a really tiny proportion of national park land is being effectively protected for nature. So we reckon it was about 6% of all land national parks are being effectively managed for nature right now. When we look at, say, for example, water quality, state of rivers in national parks, we found that just 5 of the 880 water bodies, so rivers and lakes and streams across the English national parks, just 5 of them were in the highest standards you would expect from a sort of national park designation. Every single water body had some kind of toxic pollutant in it, like a heavy metal. And there were some real hotspots for sewage in some of the national parks as well. And so when you hear about the sort of the wider conversation about sewage, that is happening within our national parks. And in some places, it's even worse in national parks than it is in urban areas. We found that on peatland, there was very little data on peatland. And peatlands, national parks contain a really significant proportion of the nation's peatland. And, this really important habitat that can suck carbon out of the air. But the estimates that we came across were up to 80% of that is in poor condition. So it's actually emitting carbon dioxide rather than soaking it up. We looked at woodland coverage. 15% of national parks are covered with trees, and only a fraction of a percent has increased in the last 5 years.
Sorry, across all of our national park, the entire land space, 15% is woodland.
Yeah, and that it varies significantly. So New Forest, you expect a lot more.
It's a foresty one.
Yeah, but
London's 23% tree cover.
What about Lake District?
So we found that in some areas, so for example, places like the Yorkshire Dales and the Peak District had less woodland coverage than cities of York and
how are you going to shoot pheasants when there are pesky trees in the way?
So part of this, and then the other, and I'll just finish off with this. We found that it was really difficult to get hold of any species data. Or the data that we could get showed that there were populations of red list species in all of the national parks. So it sort of reinforces this idea that they are places where wildlife is, endangered, wildlife is clinging on. But the flip side of that is that some of the national hotspots for bird crime are in some of the national parks. So the Dales and the Peak District saw some of the highest levels of birds of prey persecution in those parks. So it just shows that there are some good examples, and we firmly believe that because of the designation and because of what there is in some places, that they are great places to start the nature recovery fight back. Basically, what the situation is that the national park designation is not helping address some of these national issues, if you like, UK-wide issues around what's causing those declines in water quality, in biodiversity, in habitat, etc. So they're just not powered or empowered or resourced enough in order to buck some of those trends.
I can hear kind of, sorry, some of our listeners, I can almost hear having a conversation with someone like a friend of mine and me telling them this information. And the one simple question they're going to turn around and ask is why? Like, why is this like that? If these spaces were dedicated as these kind of spaces for nature to thrive, for people to thrive and enjoy within, why are they in this state? What has happened?
Yeah, so there are sort of, I guess, sort of two. There's a sort of a long-term issue, which is when the national parks were founded 75 years ago. Back then, the threat that they could envisage was sort of a concrete one. So they were protected and empowered to stop, in urbanization and industrialization of these landscapes. And in that degree, they've been really successful.
They've nailed that.
Yeah. House prices are high.
Beautiful views, beautiful places that 100 million people still visit every year. So in some degree it's been successful, but they didn't envisage the huge intensification of agriculture and intensification of grouse moor. They didn't envisage climate change, sewage, all of those things that they were never empowered to stop any of that or address any of that. And actually what we've got at the moment is a national park authority in many ways has more power to dictate what colour windows someone has than they have to address what's happening.
I feel like that's so British. Oh God, I just feel like we've reached peak British when like the nightjar can't be protected, but
we can control
I was
the
trying to
windows.
think of a posh paint colour, but your window frame has to remain ivory.
Made from.
And then there's a sort of more recent thing, which is particularly over the last 14 years, they've been completely defunded. We've had these cuts, we've had erosions to the powers that they do have, which has meant that the great work that they were trying to do, in spite of all of that, has had to be shrunk back. And so we've got to this situation where they're very much in sort of survival mode.
Yeah. I mean, you've really described, I think, really well how they were really relevant at the time. And it was quite like a radical thing to be like, let's just create national parks. I think like for the health of the nation, for the health of wildlife, to safeguard these areas, for us to practice like some really basic human rights, and also recognizing that nature needed to be free from concrete. And it was radical. And I think you've described really well how we didn't anticipate where we would be today, and therefore the pressures that has existed on them. And I think just to kind of like round up this train of thought for us then, so what, 75 years on, what do they need today? What are the changes that need to be made then to make them, if we had a blank sheet of paper and they were like, if it was as simple as going, let's make national parks fit for today, what would you write on that if, we had to hold the landowners to account to deliver that?
Good that you mentioned landowners there, Nadia, because, people think of national parks and they think of the ones in America where they're all like state-owned. The land is state-owned, but in England and in Wales, like the majority of national park land is in private ownership. The state only owns, I think it difference between different parks, but it's only about 15% of land that's actually owned by the state in the national parks. So the reforms really need to be thinking about how do we change, how do we empower and make change happen across land that isn't within the public estate. So there are some different things that we're calling for. So the first one really, it might sound uncontroversial to you, but it's certainly controversial in some places, which is that we think national parks should be really clearly for nature. And that just leadership and prioritization from the government and from national park authorities and others about, this is the place. We're going to meet our commitments on, international commitments around 30% of land protected for nature on land by 2030. We should be really focusing on getting the national parks working for nature. So there's something really important about leadership. We really welcomed new Labour government have sort of set out commitments. They want to help make national parks wilder and halt damaging practices. So that's really important. So the second thing around after the leadership really is we want to see changes to the funding model. So a new deal for national parks. And that should be for national park authorities. But much more broadly, we want to see much better targeting of investment when it comes to sort of environmental land management or other public spend in national parks to sort of provide the incentives that we need to change behaviour there. But then the third area is really around more powers to sort of introduce controls on the practices that harm the national park environment the most. So we'd like to see a ban on peatland burning, vicarious liability and licensing for grouse moors.
The basic stuff that we should have been doing a long bloody time ago, eh?
This is where we're a podcast, but I really wish our listeners could see Nadia's face.
It's just like, and I'm so grateful, Rose, that you guys are pushing for it really clearly.
Yeah,
I mean, I would check out your website because it's really clear. Here's what we need to deliver. And like, it's so frustrating that we're still asking for basic, very harmful practices to stop.
Yeah. So enforcement of the law. You know, we've got a massive water quality issue in national parks. We need
enforcement of the law.
It's wild out there. It's like the Wild West.
Yeah. Well, Rose, thank you so much. You've kind of given. Oh, we haven't asked you this question. Do you have a favourite national park?
Oh yeah. I mean, diplomatically, of course, I don't have. I love them all.
Of course.
But we're not diplomatic on this.
Everyone's got a favourite child, Rose.
Yeah. Well, I'm sort of like a firm believer in the sort of places that make us sort of idea. And I grew up just on the edge of the South Downs National Park, Portsmouth, in a council estate. And we used to just be able to go out in my dad's van at the weekends to the chalk streams and hills and bluebell woods. And that I mean, I'm showing my age, but that then became the South Downs National Park. And yeah, that landscape is the one that, yeah.
Nice.
Oh,
nice.
so
I mean, chalk
beautiful.
stream and bluebell woodlands. Can't really go wrong.
And I think you've absolutely hit the nail on the head for us there, Rose. This idea of walking out your door, you know, knowing that that's a place that you can go and it's so close to your heart. Thank you so much. One that I've not been to that I think maybe, Ryan, a trip next time I come see you down south.
Yes, let's do it. It's not far from London at all. Rose, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure to meet you and chat with you. And also, just thank you for giving us a wider picture of national parks in the UK. Like Nadia said at the beginning, I don't think a lot of people, we all know they're there, but we don't really know what they are or what state they're in. And it's given us a great kind of overview. And nerds listening, Campaign for National Parks are linked in the write-up of this episode. Go check them out and see what the work they're doing and everything. But yeah, Rose, thank you so much for coming on Into the Wild.
Fabulous. Thank you.
Thanks, Rose.
There you go. Big thank you again to Rose.
So do you feel informed now, Ryan?
I do. My brain is buzzing.
Because you knew nothing about national parks.
Nothing. Absolutely. We started before me and Nadia pressed record, and it was just me and I said, do you know what, this one not that I haven't learned on the others, but this one I know sweet FA about.
But this is what I found mad, right? Because you are a nature lover who loves nature.
Yeah.
And when you think about national parks, they're like the places that are green, that haven't been built on. And therefore, like, it's almost like if they were doing well and they were like rainbows with beavers jumping over them, which is now the
aspiration.
That's now the gold standard of wildlife conservation.
That's like the 5-star.
Yeah, that's 5-star. You would know all about them, right? If they were the best of the best, because they would be the places
100%.
with all the beavers, and they would be the places with like
the reason why we know about Yellowstone National Park.
Yeah, you know more about national parks in other countries than you do about ours, because guess what? They are a shit show. And I think this is something that I like. Obviously, I bang the drum about this all the time, but like the point that Rose made about the high incidences of wildlife crime and bird of prey persecution, so much of that to do is that a lot of these places are just playgrounds for the rich, and they are playgrounds for people that have access, and then we just can't have it. Like, we're just not allowed to be in these places where all of these activities can take place. And you know, I'm such a champion for exactly the reason why these places were founded. They belong to the nation, and we should be able to have access and to stand up and just be like, hang on, why are you chucking that in the river? Like, why are you polluting the river? Where is this?
Why are there metallic pollutants in that river? Like, why is that happening? Like, why? Yeah. Good question.
Yeah.
I also think it's a good point Rose made, and I know we picked up on that chat, and I want to just say it again, they are national parks. They are for the people of this nation. And I think that's a really strong point when you consider the UK and England and stuff. And you go, you know what, they have communities living in them. They have towns and stuff. They have landowners. but they are national parks. They are for all of us. They are for me, for Nadia, for everyone listening here as well. So I think that's a really important point that Rose made that we should hold on to.
I would love more people to be able to get out and enjoy it, knowing that by using it and being there, you are strengthening that bond of belonging. You are strengthening that sense of like, I belong here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, there can be expensive places to get out, but do if you can.
Yeah, write to Luxembourg and say, how did you do it?
Do you know what? If we could combine Luxembourg with our national park system, everyone would just get to them for free.
Can you imagine?
I actually do think if I wasn't campaigning for the things that I campaigned for, I think I would be campaigning for basically
free
to open
travel.
up the old rail network and make it all free.
Yeah.
I'd just go to places. Like for shits and giggles, I'd be like, if I think about it, if it was free, I'd wake up and I'd be like, I might just get the train to so-and-so and go see that.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't do it if it's 30
What are you
quid.
doing today? I'm just going to Berwick-on-Tweed.
Great place to go.
Why? Well, it's free, isn't it? That's what my grandparents did when they got their bus pass. Babe, they travelled.
You do.
Not far. Berkshire, that's where the buses went. But, it's still...
But you do.
It's free travel, yeah, totally. They didn't go to Legoland much. Not their vibe.
There's one bus here on Butte, and I cannot wait to get that for free.
We did the open-top bus on Butte. That was good.
Yeah, we did.
Wasn't free.
When I'm a pensioner now, you wouldn't get that.
No, you wouldn't get that. No, too cold. Nerds, that brings us to the end of this episode. I hope you've enjoyed learning about national parks much like I've just sat here and done. But it's been a pleasure to talk to you again. I've said at the beginning of this episode, right at the very beginning, a huge thank you again, though, to everyone that came to Global Bird Fair 2024 to come and see Nadia and myself and the rest of the wonderful things that were going on. Whether you watched Nature Room 101 live on the Osprey stage with us, or whether you witnessed Drunk Natural History on the podcast stage on Friday night at 6:00.
Let's hope we never put that show out.
It's going somewhere. I think that might have to go on a Patreon. But a huge thank you for everyone to come down. The episodes will be going live. I have hinted about something there. I've said the words Patreon, so a little bit of a hint there. More things to come. But on that note, if you love Into the Wild, if you love me and Nadia chatting about nature and conservation with people in the UK and around the world, and you'd like to keep this going, then we have a Ko-fi account found in the write-up of this episode. Anything you can afford. I know money's tight all the time. But if you can cut a couple of quid here or there, it goes all back into the show. It's ko-fi.com/Into the Wild Pod. And if you're not following us on social media, you're either not on social media or you're not doing a good job. Into the Wild Podcast, just search it and we'll come up. And we're going to go away now and plan our next episode. But until next time, nerds,
have a good one.
Enjoy summer. Thanks for tuning into the show, nerds. If you don't already, make sure to follow us on social media at Into the Wild Pod on Twitter and at Into the Wild Podcast on Instagram.
And if you're able to and would like to, you can support the show by tipping us at ko-fi.com/Into the Wild Pod. That buys us the equivalent of a coffee, and we use it to fund more podcasts for your ears.
But until next time, keep well and live the good life.